All right, hello everybody, and welcome to the advice line with Father Joe's Villages about co-sheltering in the congregate setting. I will be the moderator, Charlie Jensen, administrative assistant for the client services director team here at Father Joe's, and you'll be speaking with Jessie Casement, the division director of client services. She's been here for 15 years as one of and she's a champion of the view that shelters pets should welcome pets along with their humans, a policy that for many neighbors in need has been life-changing. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A in the Whova app, and we will be reading off of those. In the meantime, I'll hand it over to Jesse.
Hi, everybody. Really excited that you're here and happy to field any questions you might have. So Charlie's going to look at the Q&A in the Whova app to see if there's any questions there, and then we'll do our best to get them answered. While he's doing that, I'll just say that I think something I always like to be able to say to people who are maybe on the fence with co-shelter, and I think we all can understand the value of bringing in pets with their people. But there are, some obstacles that we may need to overcome. It may be that our leadership isn't on board, or perhaps there's, different rules in a building that you're using, or different kind of limits that you may have from your insurance, or whatever it may be. But I always just recommend that you start small. Emotional support animals and service animals in the state of California are a reasonable accommodation for someone with a disability, but pets are not. And so you have a flexibility in your policies around pets that you maybe don't have around assistive animals in your jurisdiction. And so you can put self-imposed limits around the number of pets that you're going to serve, or you can say that maybe there is a particular species that you want to start with. We heard that from, I think it was Bo, that said they accepted cats first. And so it's really, the flexibility that you have with your pet policy, I think can help maybe to create some comfort that perhaps employees or leadership may have at your organization. So, I always just challenge you to start with one animal, have a policy that says we'll serve one pet and see how that goes and see what you learn from that.
All right, perfect. Yes, we do have a few questions. First up is I'd love to hear more about your pop-up inclement weather sheltering. How are you keeping people and pets together in tight quarters?
Okay, so inclement weather shelter is offered during the months of November to March, which to many across the country on this conference, San Diego inclement weather may not seem inclement to you. But if it gets down under 50 and there's a 40% chance or greater of rain, then the city activates its inclement weather shelter space. Like I said, that's 134 cots and mats that are laid out in our dining room. So the table meal service is over, tables are pushed aside, and we put mats down on the floor. And honestly, over the years, I've just not heard of any issues. The animal typically sleeps, on the mat or next to the mat with their human. We do have basic pet supplies that are available. We do have crates if someone needs that. But most of the animals just cuddle right in with their human, and then they leave the next morning before we serve breakfast. So it's just an overnight shelter, and it's one night at a time, and then they leave the next day.
Thank you. Can you speak more to how you've handled pet behavior issues that have come up and strategies that have been most effective?
Yeah, so typically the behavior that we see is more animal on animal. So it may be that, dogs that are excited or maybe uncomfortable being around other dogs. And then the human doesn't have maybe as much training to control that behavior, or doesn't want to control that behavior in some cases. So we're really strong from the beginning of someone moving into the program with our animal acknowledgement. It's something that our staff reviews with them at program intake, and really goes over the expectations around making sure that their animal is leashed, or under their control if they're unable to leash their animal for some physical reason. And so the expectations are strong from the beginning that the animal's going to be leashed, it's going to be under control. And then we also really help our clients to understand that these are people's pets. The same way you wouldn't walk up to someone's child and start touching their child without permission, you shouldn't do so with their pet. So it's a lot of educating to the clients that have the animals, but also to the clients who don't. We've been fortunate to have some resources through grants where we could send people and their animal to behavior training if necessary at various training locations in the city. But it's pretty rare that we need to do that. That's usually more for separation anxiety or some crate training foundation that they might need. But we also have leaned into just the expertise from our animal welfare partners. So I can't say enough about how beneficial it is to have a relationship with the animal folks in the community because they can help to provide support. For example, we've got the Humane Society the San Diego Humane Society that just this month started coming to our lobby once a month to work on behavior issues that people may be having with their animals. So it's just kind of an open office setting that they have in our lobby, and people can access them in that way. So building relationships with animal partners, making sure you have really strong policies and procedures and explain those expectations from day one and consistently enforce those expectations. And then if you do have the resources to provide the leashes, the harnesses, the tools that they may need, as well as some training classes, that's helpful as well.
All right. And what are some of the most common misperceptions about co-sheltering, and how do you debunk those myths?
Okay, so um, the idea that we might get some kind of wild, species that we just don't know how to work with. And so I remember when I started working here in 2010, I chuckled because we had an
Oh, I'm
ADA.
sorry to interrupt for 1 second. I think we had a problem, so I'm just going to
Oh, okay.
get everybody back in. Give me one
Oh, okay.
second.
We lost them.
Okay, folks are back in. Sorry about that.
Welcome back. It sounds like maybe we lost everybody for a moment there. So the question was, what are some
Uh,
misconceptions about co-sheltering? So I think there was a lot of fear from staff that we were going to have emotional support animals, for example, that were monkeys. When they learned that it could really be any species, they literally thought we would have monkeys. And so we haven't had any monkeys. We have had a rooster. But emotional support animals are a little bit different because of the accommodation component. But when it gets to pets, I mean, generally what we're seeing are dogs and cats. Every now and then there's a bird, lots of turtles for some reason. But very few small caged animals. And I think that's because they're difficult to live with on the streets. And so typically what we're seeing are dogs and cats. So definitely the misconception there. I frequently hear other organizations ask about like allergies. Do you have a difficult time navigating allergies between shelter participants? We just haven't had that. Even in our more dense space, if someone has an allergy to an animal, we're just going to put them at the opposite end of that shelter space and then really make sure that the pet owner has cleaning supplies that they can access to make sure they're cleaning up around their animal. So it's, kind of taking each situation at face value, saying, what do we need here? Do we have anyone? I think Tesha mentioned, if someone has fear around certain animals or requests not to live around those animals, then we're going to do our best in that space to make sure that they're not roommated with someone who has a cat or roommated with someone who has a guinea pig if they have a real fear of rodents. Um, but yeah, I think the biggest misconception is just that there's going to be bites and fights and so many allergies. And I can tell you after 5 years of co-sheltering and 15 years now of bringing in emotional support and service animals, the issues we have been very minimal and pretty easily adapted to. And it really just came down to, for the most part, the humans making sure they had control of their animal. So making sure they were leashing their dogs so we didn't have dogs running around in the courtyard and things like that.
Hi, Jesse. I'm working with some DV shelter staff that are new to pet programming. They are currently in the process of creating their policies and procedures and mentioned that they had some staff that were fearful of pets. As an example, was that they do room checks and the staff were worried about having unwanted interaction with pets. Do you have any suggestions for being proactive about this?
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that we faced in the beginning when we brought in animals with an existing staff. And I think, you know, you don't want people to leave because something has changed or is uncomfortable at their job. But once staff who really had fears about working with animals understood there will be animals here, you know, we gave them the training that they needed after I made my mistake of not giving them that training. And then, you know, after that, the people that come into the program know from the beginning that the animals are here. And so your onboarding and all of that has to include, you know, an emphasis on the fact that there will be animals in the space. But how do we get around the fear? Because that is very real. For example, our staff go to each room at 10 o'clock at night to do what's called bed check, just to make sure that the beds are being utilized. So if someone has disappeared, then we can assign that bed to someone else the next day. And so clients know what time bed check is going to occur. So we ask that their animal is crated or on a leash during the time of bed check so that staff can easily and quickly get to all of the rooms without worry of an animal running out of the space, or for someone with a fear of an animal having to open the door and there's a dog right there. We do ask the clients when they're leaving their room, maybe they're going to the shower, maybe they're going to a doctor's appointment and they need to leave. We ask them to crate their animal. We don't let them have their animal running loose in the space. For that exact reason, our clients need to be able to access the space without the animal being in danger or being a danger. Trying to think of what other kinds of yeah, I mean, it's really if our staff are at the door and you're in the room, we need you to, you know, contain your animal. They don't have to be in the crate all the time. We wouldn't want that. But if you're holding your cat, make sure you've got a good grip on your cat. And if you're not going to be in the room, then the animal needs to be safely contained. And there's multiple reasons. It's not just the staff. Like I said, most of our clients share their rooms. So it's not that they have a private space. And so their roommates need to be able to come and go easily from that space as well.
All right, perfect. And then we got 2 minutes left and 3 more questions. So
Okay.
let's go lightning round here. Can you share the data collection tools you refer to for tracking animals?
We use for tracking animals, we use a database that we have in-house, which is called C-Star. It doesn't help anyone other than for me to say it's a homegrown HMIS system. Our community uses Clarity, but we don't record animals in that database. We record it in our own, and then we're able to build reports off of that. So that doesn't help anybody other than to say it's a homegrown platform that we use.
And can you share the questions related to pets that you ask at intake for both people with and without pets?
Sure. So we're going to ask the human if it's an emotional support animal, a service animal, or a pet. The reason for that is because our assistive animals have different access to different spaces than our pets do. So for example, pets cannot go down to the dining room, a service dog can. So we're going to ask what kind of, you know, how they would categorize their animal. We ask them if the animal has any kind of special dietary needs that we need to accommodate. As much as possible, we'll do that with restricted funds. So we always keep basic, like large and small dog food, dry and canned on hand, and then we keep dry and canned cat food on hand. But if their dog has a special dietary need, you know, sensitive tummy or something like that, then we're going to get that food if we can through donations or by buying it with the grant money that we have. We also ask if they have crates, leashes, anything that they need to contain their animal. And then for dogs in the city of San Diego, if your dog is 4 months or older, they have to have their rabies vaccine. So we ask if they're current on their rabies. If they're not, then we help to get them set up with a local veterinarian that comes on site once a month to get their rabies vaccine. And then we go over all of our expectations and let them know of all of the resources we have available for them.
All right. 2 more questions real quick. How do you handle pets when the owner has to be taken to the hospital or other emergencies?
Great question. That was a lesson learned that we weren't taking care of from the beginning. And so when someone moves into the program and we fill out the animal acknowledgement with them, we ask them for an emergency contact for their animal at intake. So they give us a name and phone number of that person. We keep that updated as we're working with the client. We also ask them to sign a release of information for the animal shelters so that if they are taken away in an ambulance or they get arrested, we can't get a hold of their emergency contact, then we're able to connect with the animal shelter and give confidential information that we wouldn't otherwise be able to share about the human so that they can get their animal back when they're released from that facility.
Perfect. I know we're at time and we're going to a break, but we do have one more question if you guys want to hang out. How do you filter or handle any animals that might be sick and stop the spread of illness.
Okay. Our local animal welfare providers have given us some trainings on what to look for around animal illness as well as any animal neglect. So as our staff are doing regular room checks throughout their day, and then as well as at bed check, their eyes on the animal to make sure that they're not showing any signs and symptoms of abuse or illness. If the animal's showing that they're sick, we're going to absolutely work with the client to understand what might be going on. If there's any way we can support them by connecting them to local veterinarians. If the animal appears to be neglected, we are going to call animal welfare immediately and have them engage in the way that they need to around the safety of that animal.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I believe that's the conclusion of our advice line here. So thank you everyone for attending.
Thanks for being here. If you're not co-sheltering yet, good luck. It makes it more fun. Thanks for coming.